My name is Pat Fader, and I want to run through or talk about the tools that we can use to back up and recover Windows operating systems. This is not going to be an all-inclusive discussion on it. I just want to highlight some of the tools that I've used in the past, and this really complements what you see in your Chapter 11 and test out. So with that said, let me just kind of jump in and we'll start talking about it. And I'm going to run this the same way I'd run a class. I've hit the record button. I'm going to go, and you're going to get it, mistakes and all. So with that, let's talk about backup and recovery. Let's see here. So really what I want to look at is what our options are under backup here, and also recovery. And the way I'll start this off is I'll first talk about what we can do to prepare for a disaster, and then what we can do after the fact. So as far as preparing for a disaster, I can think of three things that you'd want to do. One is you'd want to verify or ensure that your restore points have been turned on. Two, you would want to perhaps back up your entire operating system, or you can even schedule backups for that matter if you want to, or you could actually get a backup, your entire C drive, the operating system, user files, and all. And then three, file history is a pretty cool tool that's new in Windows 10 that you might want to consider turning on as well. So let's just go top to bottom. Let's start talking about restore points. And sometimes I have to think about it, like just how to get to some of these features. And obviously, the easiest thing really is, I think, is just to type in what you're looking for this way. Create a restore point. That would probably get us close, but anyways, I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. System protection. Okay, so you can see on this virtual machine here, I have my restore points enabled for my C drive. If we look at configure here, I've dedicated about 7 gigabytes of space for restore points. And what a restore point is, and I'll let you Google this to get a more comprehensive or get a more a more complete explanation of it. But basically, these restore points are going to contain a snapshot of your operating system, your registry settings, and so basically your operating system files and your registry settings. It will not include things like your user information, like your My Documents folder or anything like that. So this is basically used to protect the operating system. And the thought here is you've installed a new piece of software, and after you install a new driver or a new piece of software, your machine isn't working properly. A restore point lets you, or a Windows update, a restore point lets you then take and roll your system back to the way it was. So you can see that I've enabled it. I could create a restore point if I wanted to manually create one, but Windows does it automatically. It's like every day it takes a restore point, and then if you ever install a Windows update or a device driver or a piece of software, it automatically creates one as well. So you kind of get those. And it might be interesting if I just take a look at my actual physical host computer that I'm recovering on, that I'm working on right now. I can just show you all the restore points that have been created automatically on my desktop system. So let's see here. Let's choose a different restore point. I don't want to mess around with this, but if we take a look, I mean, so over the last from December 3rd through 11/18, so that's about 2 weeks, I'm getting one about every day. And if I go back to the oldest one, the 18th, and let's just scan for programs that might be affected if I chose to roll my computer back at this point in time. Looks like I got a Google Chrome update and a security update, and there's some drivers. So basically, you can see there's some programs and drivers that would end up being deleted or modified as a result of me rolling my system back to the way it was 2 weeks ago. So nothing about user information there. This is purely getting your operating system up and running. So it's not bad to turn restore points on. And the next thing, as far as doing a backup goes, we'll talk about that. And what I did on this computer actually is, if I look at my virtual machine settings here, I just added a second hard drive. And that is where I wanted to store my Windows backup and actually my file history. I think in practice, a lot of times, some people might have a dedicated hard drive. They would just, like, if you have an old hard drive laying around at home, you could slap that in your desktop system and use that for your backup, or just pick up a $50 USB external drive and you could use that as well. So I just added a second drive to my machine, and let's take a look at backup now. Let's start over. See, awkward pause as I look for look to find it here. So I'm looking for backup. Go to backup under store. The Windows 7 way here. But what I could do is I could create a system image, and it's looking for a backup. So basically here, it would put the system image on my E drive, and then what is a system image? Let's see. I'm not sure if it'll tell us actually here. Well, here, system image is it's a copy of the drives required for Windows to run. So basically, this is going to include the drive where your Windows operating system is installed, and I believe it's also going to contain the partitions that are used to boot up your operating system. Let me see if it says anything on the next. Yeah, here we go. So I have a UEFI based system. So there's actually going to be the EFI system partition, that's actually the first partition that gets executed. Then from there it loads the Windows operating system, which is on my C drive, and this recovery system basically contains the tools that we're going to talk about that can be used to recover a Windows operating system. I'm not 100% sure on this. I guess I don't think this may. I hate to say this might actually contain, like, if you bought like a Dell laptop, or you bought an HP laptop, it might contain the factory install of the operating system as well, so that default installation. But don't hold me to that. That's something you got to double check on your own. But anyways, if I run this, you can tell it's going to take up 13 gigabytes of space. That's my entire C drive, essentially, plus these other partitions that are really small. This one's like 450 megabytes on this computer, and this is like 100 megabytes or something like that. It's pretty minimal. I guess we could take a look real quick just to see how big they actually are. Yeah, 450 megabytes. That has the tools in it, the recovery partition, and 99 megabytes that contains the first partition that gets executed when the computer turns on, which in turn loads our Windows operating system. Good stuff. So anyways, I could run that. I did it last night. So basically, if we look on my E drive, I don't want to run it now. Wait for it. But if we look on my E drive, this Windows image backup folder was created, and I won't dig through it. But there's actually some big virtual hard drives in there that were created of my physical hard disk. So with that said, we've talked about so far using creating restore points, or enabling that feature. We've talked about creating a system image of my operating system. And I'm kind of curious about this. I wasn't going to click on this here. Create a system image, system repair disk. Oh, we can make a better one, actually. We'll worry about this. We'll come. Yeah, this basically can be used to boot a computer. If you've created a system image and you want to restore your computer, you have a couple ways of doing it. One way would be taking out your Windows 10 DVD-ROM or downloading one and just booting your machine off of it and hitting R or repair on the first screen, which would then allow you to do a system restore of your computer. You could also, for the person that doesn't have access like you do to the Windows 10 OS, you could just make a boot disk here. Making a note because I want to talk about a recovery drive in a bit, which will also allow us to get to boot a computer up and to get to the tools that we need to restore an operating system. And last but not least is file history. I've already enabled it. It's under backup using file history. I've turned it on, and we can see what it looks like in a second. But if we look at the options, we'll see that that my files, basically it's my user files, not my operating system files. My user files are being backed up every 10 minutes, and this is going to go on forever and ever and ever, I guess, until we run out of space. My assumption is that at that time it'll just kind of start overwriting the oldest material, the oldest content in there. Although, oh no, I guess not. I think it looks like we'd get some kind of error message when we ran out of space, and I'm basing that on the fact that the other option is, another option is you can just keep backing stuff up and saving it until you need more space, and then it would kind of wrap around. Anyways, if I look at what's being backed up here, it's pretty much everything in your user's profile, like users/admin save games, links, downloads, favorites, on and on and on and on. And you can remove folders and add folders as well. So you can choose, if you have a separate directory that has all your family photos in it, maybe whatever, you could add that as well, and you're backing those up. And then those would be going to my when I turned it on, I had to specify what drive to use. So I'm using that E drive that I added. So I could almost demo that real quickly on this other computer here. So I have a second VM running. I could add a second drive real quick because I only have one disk right now. So let me add one. Next. I'll get myself in trouble. This is called spouse mode. Just keep clicking next and you're done. Didn't really pay attention to what I was saying. All right. So I've added a drive to my computer. Let's go to disk management here. We'll have to like initialize it, and so I'll go with GPT, which is the latest and greatest way for the Windows operating system to store partition information about what's on the disk. Just basically, there's some fault tolerance in here. It's faster. Partitions can be larger, etc. This is pretty much the way you want to go. Unless you're trying to do some kind of backwards compatibility, then you choose MBR. Alright, so the disk has been initialized, and now I just want to format it. I guess I have it's the E drive. New guy that worked for the Milwaukee Police Department, and he'd always, for volume labels, he'd put the user's actually name on it, the volume label. So logic being, if he was ever working on a bunch of machines and a bunch of hard drives on his desk, if he happened to forget which one went where, he could always plug it in and just look at the volume label. Alright, so it's formatted. 60 gigabytes. Good. We can just ignore this. So now let's just turn on file history. Let's turn on file history. Here we go, update and security. And back up. Add a drive. The drive is still usable. It's just, it's just using a chunk of my E drive. There we go. Turned on. More options. Here's how I can configure it. I'll go every 10 minutes. And as far as the folders go, we pretty much, it's just everything that we see in the user's profile. If I go to my C drive, users, admin, it's pretty much everything in here. My admin user's profile, his desktop, his documents, his downloads, his favorites, links. OneDrive, that's actually cool too. I wasn't going to talk about that, but if you set up OneDrive, the nice thing then is you can have all your documents not only being backed up by file history, but they're also zipping off to the cloud as well. So with that said, let's go back to the first machine and try to remember what I was talking about. So far in summary, we've talked about turning on System Restore. We've talked about creating a backup. I didn't discuss it, but when you look into that, if you want, you can actually set that tool up to, on a monthly basis, perform a system backup if you want to. So that's another tool that Microsoft gives you for doing backups. And the third, we talked about file history. All right. So now what I want to do is look at how we would use some of that information to recover a system that starts to behave poorly. Sound like a parent now, behaving poorly. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go to recovery, and I want to talk about reset this PC, advanced startup, and some more recovery options. And again, you're thinking, well, this is kind of dumb, Pat. I mean, the machine's booting up. If I'm booting up the system, odds are it's not that bad. I could probably fix it. But anyways, we'll look at these tools here, and then I'll also show you how to get to them from a recovery drive, which means your system's having issues booting, so you're going to boot off of something else to try it and recover it. Yeah, also really, the beauty about doing this stuff on a virtual machine is you can take snapshots and you can try things. So, just for kicks today, I mean, just not for kicks, but as just in preparation for this, I actually I took a snapshot basically of being on this screen right here. So that way, if I mess something up, I can always jump back to this computer. I also, these tools that we're looking at really, they're nice for fixing single systems and home users. I think they're fantastic. There's enterprise level tools that would provide a more efficient way of backing up your users' data, and that's something you'd want to think about or work with. When you get hired on at a place, see what they're doing. Okay, let's start and work from the top down. That way I can't forget too much. Reset this PC. What the heck is that? All right, so basically what the reset this PC is going to do, it's going to take the operating system that your machine first had installed when you bought it, and it's going to restore it. It's going to do like a fresh install, but using those installation files. So if you bought an HP laptop and it's got all that bloatware on it, like you get the Symantec antivirus and you've got the Microsoft Office things popping up all over the place, you're going to get all of it back. So you're going to basically get the system back to the way that it was when you first bought it, which is a good thing. At times it's a nice way to start over again. And you have two options. One is you can just remove everything, or you can keep your personal files. So like basically the stuff that's in your user's profile, and then refresh the operating system. That means you're going to lose all your applications that were installed, any settings or any tweaks you made to the OS after you installed it, any Windows updates. That's all gone, right? So basically all that you're getting is you're restoring your OS and keeping your personal data, which isn't all bad. Or if you're getting ready to sell your laptop, sell your desktop, just remove everything. You can choose this, and it won't take too long. I'll back out of it. But so this is actually, I have 2 drives installed on my computer, so it's offering to scrub both drives. And on the next screen, it'll actually say, do you want me to delete it the quick way, or do you want me to really delete it? And basically, that'll take a couple hours, but it'll go over every sector on your hard disk and kind of write a pattern to it, then write a different pattern to it, and then write a different pattern to it. So basically, the thought is, if you write one location over and over and over again, it's impossible to go back and pull data, the original data off. That's seven writes ago kind of thing. So, anyways, they give you some great tools for resetting your PC to sell it, or just resetting it to start using it all over again. So that's the top one, reset this PC. We'll skip the middle one, and then we'll talk about more recovery options. And what this is this is going to take your current version of Windows. So if you're at version 1809, and if you hit fresh start and get started, it's basically going to take those. It's going to reinstall those. It's going to go through like a fresh install using that version of Windows. It says here, start with a clean and up-to-date installation of Windows. So it's almost implied that it's going to go out and grab the Windows updates. That's not the case. I tried it. I mean, that's sometimes the only way to know is you try. Like, so I took this Windows 10 machine, I did a fresh start on it, and I was at version 1703 before I started, and I was at version 1703 when I was done, and I ensured that my virtual machine had internet access. So, but basically the difference between this and the previous one, the reset this PC, is that when you reset the PC, you're going all the way back to the way it was when you bought it, versus fresh start. You're basically you're starting from your current starting point of Windows, the Windows OS, and installing that version onto your computer. Again, in both cases, the top one and the bottom one, you're going to lose any applications you've installed. With the top one, you're going to keep all that bloatware that came with your PC. With this bottom one down here, all you're getting back is a Windows operating system. So, and then the logic here is that, okay, so you use this to use one of these two to recover, to kind of like reset your machine, and then you've hopefully backed up your user data some way to recover what's important to you. So far we've talked about resetting this PC, we talked about recovery options, and now we're going to talk about this advanced startup. And yeah, we'll go. I'm just kind of debating which way to go with this. So we're going to talk about the advanced startup, and I'll go here real quick. And what I want to point out is, let's just give it a second to get there. Okay, this is kind of cool. From this screen here, I can boot into Windows, big deal. I can troubleshoot. I can reset this PC, which we just talked about a second ago, right, on that previous screen. You know, reset. If I go back and there we go. So I can reset this PC. I can choose that option. Has the same options on it. Under advanced options here, I can do a system restore, which is basically which is not basically, it's the same thing. It's a restore point, so I can take my machine back to a restore point. It's turned off here. God darn it! But if I would click on this, I could do a system restore and then pick which restore point I want to go back to. A system image recovery, so I could choose this. We'll give it a second. I'm almost done with this, so thanks for taking the time to watch this. This screencast has gone a bit longer than I thought it would. I just paused it for like a minute, and we got to the screen here. So I'm doing an image recovery. This is going to work because I created that image earlier using the Windows backup utility. It makes sense that it would ask you to put in a user account with some administrative privileges to be able to do this, to affect the computer significantly. You need to have the appropriate permissions to do so. All right, so I think I only have one system image on here. Yeah, one. So I can basically take my computer and I can wind it back to the way it was at 5:30 yesterday. Next. Back up. So it's basically going to back up my EFI system partition, my C drive, and I'm guessing this is that. Hey, I shouldn't be guessing on a screencast because that can be called wrong on it, but it's going to back up the recovery partition as well. So next, and we're going to let it fly. So I guess I lied here. It's just showing us it's going to back up two drives, the EFI system partition and the C drive. So not the recovery partition. Okay. Well, there you go. There you have it. So I'm not going to go any further with this, but you get the idea what could happen. Let's cancel out of this. All right. So let's see here. Reset the PC we talked about. System restore we've talked about. System image recovery. This startup repair can be used to repair the files that are used to boot up the operating system. We talked about that EFI system partition. That basically is the first partition to get loaded during the boot process on a UEFI as opposed to a BIOS-based computer. So all the new computers all have this UEFI firmware. They're not BIOS-based anymore. And there's other options as well. We could jump to a command prompt. Looks like we could get into our UEFI firmware settings. We could go to our startup settings here and perhaps load Windows in what's called safe mode, with fewer device drivers to try to get it up and running that way. So you have a bunch of options here from this advanced options menu to recover your computer. And I'm not covering it all. I'm just covering some of the things that I've used in the past. So one way of getting to this is just selecting it from the recovery menu, if that's the right word. Here, restart now. That's one way of getting to it. Another way of getting to there is if your machine boots up, or if you get to the initial startup login screen, you can hit the restart button, but just hold the shift key down. So if you hold the shift button down and click on restart, still holding shift down here. We'll see if I lied. There it goes. So I can get into it that way. And the other way of getting to it would be to boot up, like I mentioned earlier, off a Windows 10 DVD, and just on the first screen just choose repair. I could probably even do that real quick here. And Let's take 30 seconds. Well, I say 30 seconds. It's connected. And I am going to, as far as an ISO goes, I'm going to boot up off my Windows 10 ISO. I think we'll get it. So it's connected at power on. Boot up off the ISO. Hit OK. So that's the same as putting a computer, a ROM in my machine's DVD ROM drive. Let's see what happens. Should see something like press any key to boot off the DVD. Maybe. If not, I have to go one more step with this, which then you're going to say, Pat, is way more than 30 seconds. Oh boy. Let's see if we got it. I don't think so, but okay, I lied, but let's do this. Powered it off. VM, power onto firmware. You know, it might be a case of like you have to change your boot order in here, kind of like something you have to do on a physical machine as well. But now that we're booting onto our firmware, I should have a boot menu that I can choose a boot device, one of which would be our, you know, actually let me just, while that's starting up, let's just check our settings to make sure that my ROM is still, drive is still connected. All right, boot manager. Okay, I could boot off the CD-ROM. I think I'm going to select that here. Let's see what happens. This is where I would come here if I wanted to change the boot order or whatever. There we go. Pressing a key to boot off the CD. So now I'm booting off my CD-ROM, DVD-ROM. Actually, just an ISO file. But my virtual machine thinks it's a ROM. All right, English looks good. R, repair your computer. I can choose that guy. There it is. So it's another way of getting there. And then the final way of getting to these tools. Let me just go back to speed things up. Let's just go back to the pre-demo snapshot. Because I can make a recovery drive. Let's make a recovery drive, and I think I can actually get here. Yeah, I can get here from the control panel also. The control panel, and I could choose small icons. Just get it all in there. Let's see here. Recovery. Okay. Create a recovery drive. You have to do this ahead of time. It looks like I could do a system restore here too to pull up my restore points. But anyways, well, you know, back in the old days, like Windows 7, when you created this these restore points, that actually, in addition to like your operating system, it would actually create backup of all your user files as well. Windows has since separated the two, so the restore points are more for the operating system, and then file history is what you use for your user data. Just a side note. Open system to create a recovery drive. Yes. Let's see if it's looking for a USB stick. Oh, I can tell my VMware Workstation to. I can tell to use my USB drive that I have. Nope, that didn't work so well, did it? Okay, so it finally came up. I just gave it a little bit. The drive must be able to hold at least 4 gigabytes. So it actually it saw the hard drive that I added earlier, the E drive, and this is the USB drive I plugged in. It's labeled recovery because I actually ran through these steps yesterday and made a recovery disk. I don't want to click on all the. I don't want to overwrite this yet because I kind of want to show you what it looks like. But if I did, if I did choose my E drive, my E hard disk, which is the disk that we added through the settings here. It's a 20 gigabyte guy. Next. Everything's going to be deleted. So again, if I use my USB stick on this one, that USB stick, I'd have to keep it somewhere, and that would be kind of like, oh, and actually if I hit, was it on there? Create a recovery drive. I want to before I hit the next button too quick. Backup system file. So basically, that's going to back up your operating system file. So not your user data, but your operating system. So if I create a recovery drive, it can have those tools to give us the advanced options menu that we've been looking at for the last half hour, as well as a copy of your operating system. So I can put those two things on my drive. I've already done that. So next. 30 minutes later, it's done. And I can show you what it looks like. So let's do this. If I'm an Explorer, oh, here it is. Recovery. Properties. Yeah, so it's like 30. It was a 64 gigabyte stick I had laying around here. It looks like it used not a heck of a lot. Not too impressive here. But I guess 4 gigabytes is all that was needed for it to create a copy of my operating system files, install files, as well as the tools, advanced startup option tools. So we can boot this machine off of that as well. And again, I'm still checking down here. It shows that my my USB stick is connected. I can tell because my only option when I click on this down here is to disconnect it from the host. So what's good? So I can just turn this computer off. Power it off. To boot off my recovery drive. This isn't totally necessary because, again, if you have a Windows 10 DVD-ROM, or if you have access to one of those, you can just boot off of that and select repair like I demoed. But I have it on this USB stick here. What's nice is it does contain the current. It will contain the files for the current version of the operating system. So if I bought the if my ROM if my DVD install is back from version 1703 and we're at 1809, obviously my USB stick would be better having the 1809 files on it. Power on to firmware. And we'll select the USB stick, and then we'll be done. So I hope this has been helpful. I mean, as we're kind of wrapping this up, there's I feel like Windows has given us a lot of tools for being able to prepare for disasters and recover for them once they do occur. I just, at the very least, I mean, this is something that every user has to do, is just figure out what's important and how am I going to get ready for that failure. Because I can guarantee you that of the people that are listening here, if typical class has 15, 20 people in it, that one of you this semester is going to have some kind of catastrophic failure. Boy, how's that for gloom and doom? But that's just kind of what I've seen every semester in teaching these classes here at MATC. Is just this things fail. I just bought a 2 terabyte, or I guess I bought a 1 terabyte external USB drive for doing some backups on our home system, and I have basically with my backup, the thing that I really wanted to make sure that I had some way of keeping off-site or off the computers all of our videos and just all of our home movies and home pictures and that kind of stuff. So that's I'm backed up and I'm all set and ready to go. Knock on wood, I shouldn't have to. Hopefully, don't have to use it. So right now I'm booting off the USB stick, and I'll pause it so you don't have to wait as long as I do. It only took like a minute or two. So this is what you see when you boot off your recovery drive, which I have on a USB key, and we'll check US. And here we go. There it is again. So from this point on my system, we've already talked about everything on here. We could recover from a drive. And I can't go back. I'll darn it. But you get the options. You get the idea. I can now recover my system by using my recovery drive. Well, I hope this has been helpful. I hope you learned something, and I hope you're enjoying the class this semester. Have a great day. Thanks.